Hi, my name is Kevin Knoll. I'm with Old National Investments, and today I'm here to talk to you about the Easter Seals Ark of Northeast Indiana 403B plan. What is a 403B plan? Well, it's a retirement plan that gives you the opportunity to help save for your retirement, and it allows Easter Seals Ark to help match your contributions. Why do we need to consider thinking about retirement? Some of you out there may be 25 years old, others of you may be 55. Either way, you may say, hey, I have several years before I get to retirement. So why think about it now? Hopefully I can address those things today. We'll talk a little bit about life expectancies. We'll talk about when to begin saving for retirement. And hopefully we'll address a little bit about investments before we talk about the specifics of the plan and then address some of the forms that you will be required to fill out. The first slide here talks about life expectancy probabilities. So for example, it makes an assumption that today you're 65 years of age. At 65, you have, if you are a female, an 85% chance of hitting age 75. You have a 72% chance of hitting age 80 and a 33% chance of hitting age 90. A male, on the other hand, has slightly less probability of reaching those ages. What I find interesting about this slide is if you're age 65 today and you're married, there's a 97% chance that one of you will hit age 75. And if you look to your right, there's a 47%, almost 50% chance one of you is going to hit age 80. So what does that mean? That means if I retire at 65 years old or wait till I get full benefits at age 67, I could possibly need a retirement nest egg to last me 23 to 30 years. Let's look at the next slide. You might say, you know what? I'm probably just going to work until I die. Sometimes I think of that. I have 6 kids and I think that being an ATM, I have to work until I die. But what we find here is on this slide is there's a lot of individuals that retire before age 65. In fact, only 23% of the people today that are surveyed indicate that they will retire before age 65. What we find in real life is 69% of all retirees today actually retired before age 65. And the chart on the right kind of shows why. Some of them had health problems or a disability. Some of them had to care for a spouse or a family member. Some people had to retire before age 65 because there was changes at their company. Maybe their company merged or closed down. Then there's some other reasons. The good reasons down there are, hey, I wanted to do something else and I was able to afford retirement. So we also might have to think about retirement not actually starting at age 70. So when we go back to that life expectancy chart, the previous chart, and we combine that with this chart, it might be easy to see that we need to build a retirement nest egg for 30 years or more. So how do we begin doing that? Well, this slide, although it may be a little bit difficult to read, I'd like to walk through it. And this slide is titled Benefit of Saving Early. So what is the benefit of saving early? If we look at this slide, the light blue line shows a person named Chris. He invests $5,000 a year between the ages of 25 and 65 for a total of $200,000 of his own money. If you see at the bottom of the slide, we're assuming a 7% annual return. By the time Chris reaches age 65, he has $1.1 million in his retirement nest egg. Now, I know one of the things you're thinking out there is, look, I don't have $5,000 to invest per year, so this slide is nothing for me. It doesn't do anything for me. Well, don't focus on the fact that it's $5,000. What I want you to focus on the fact is saving early makes a huge difference when building your retirement nest egg. Look at Bill, which is kind of the green line. Bill invests $5,000, but he doesn't start till he's age 35. So maybe he said he had to buy too many diapers and formula. Maybe Bill partied too much. Whatever he spent his money on, he chose to wait till age 35. He put in $150,000 of his own money, and through earnings, it grew to $540,000. Still not a bad deal. However, it's $600,000 less than how Chris invested. Just as another example here, The light gray line, which is a little difficult to see, in the far left side, it says Susan invests $5,000 between ages 25 and 35. All she has put into the plan is $50,000. At 35, she quit savings. Maybe she's still working. Maybe she left the workforce. Don't really know. But Susan doesn't touch this and leaves it out there for retirement. The interesting thing here is that she actually has more money than Bill, and she only put $50,000 in. So you can see sort of the benefit of starting early and saving something for retirement. Now, going back to the $5,000 amount, don't get caught up in the size of the annual contribution. How do I begin to build retirement savings into my budget? Well, I think the easiest way is to sign up for the plan and start with a 1% or 2% type of contribution. Something that's not going to cause you to go in debt, something that won't cause you to be bankrupt, but maybe it tests you a little bit. Maybe you have to give up a pizza and a six-pack per week, or maybe you have to give up lunch at McDonald's for 2 days per week. Try that. And then what you do is when you get a merit increase, I don't know whether that's 6 months, 1 year down the road, but you get a merit increase of 3%, walk into the HR area and say, hey, I want to increase my deferrals 1%. You still get to take home 2% of that 3% raise you got. So now you're saving at 2 or 3%, and you keep doing this until you build yourself up to a good 10% of your income. And I know that may shock some of you when I say 10% of your income, but studies kind of indicate at age 25, you need to start saving about 10% of your income for retirement in order to sort of sustain the same quality of living in retirement. So hopefully what you've seen here in the first few slides is we need to build a nest egg to cover the amount of time we're going to spend a third of our life not working. So I need to build a nest egg. And this slide hopefully emphasizes the sooner I begin that process and I harness the power of compounding, I can impact my savings the most over the long term. So let's go to the next slide. Let's assume for a second that we have built a portfolio and a nest egg at retirement. How much money should I take out per year? Well, studies kind of indicate on these two charts that you should take out 4 to 5% of your account balance per year in order to make sure you don't run out of money. When I work with people that are age 60, 65, they have two big concerns when they come to me to talk about their portfolio. One is, I don't want to lose money. And secondly, I don't want to run out of money. And not necessarily in that order. If they're already retired, they say, I don't want to run out of money and I don't want to lose money, kind of in the opposite order. What you see here on the chart on the right is they took $1 million portfolio, and it really doesn't matter if it's a $10,000 portfolio. But they did studies on it, and if you took 4% of that portfolio out per year, or $40,000 on a $1 million portfolio, then that portfolio historically lasted more than 30 years. If you took 5% out, you notice it might only last about 28 years. If you took 6% of your portfolio out, it's closer to 21 years. Do those numbers sound a little bit familiar? 21 years, 27 years, or more than 30 years? Again, that kind of matches up with the time period between the beginning of your retirement and your life expectancy age. So what we're trying to do here is build a bucket of money through saving early and getting a matching contribution from the company. And then at retirement, we want to be able to take out 4 or 5% of that money and combine that with our Social Security. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when we elect to defer money into the 403B plan and when Easter Seals ARC puts in a matching contribution for us. The first thing we're going to ask you to do is to select an investment or several investments. And you go, wait a minute, I don't know anything about investments. And I'm going to give you some options here in a little bit to talk to you about, hey, what can I do to seek out some help here? But I want to look at this particular slide first because I think it breaks down the difference between stocks or ownership in companies, bonds are loanership, and then treasury bills, which here really are sort of a substitution for your bank or credit union savings account, if you will. So this slide shows us that in 1950, if we had put $1 in a treasury bill, which is kind of that light blue line toward the bottom of the chart, if we put $1 in treasury bills, by 2013, that grew to a whopping $16. At the same time, inflation, remember how much the cost of goods in a basket rise, at the same time, inflation went to $10. So you kind of eked out a little bit of gain over inflation. If you had put that same dollar in bonds, or what we call bond funds, and bonds is just a fancy word for loans. Here we're lending money to different countries and corporations across the world, and they're promising to pay us an interest rate and promise to pay the principal back. Over time, since 1950 to 2013, that dollar grew to $41. Notice that line's a little bit more jaggedy. There's a few more times when maybe you open your statement, you'll see that your bond fund or your bonds went down in value. So there's a little bit of what we call volatility with respect to bonds. Let's move up the scale here a little bit on the right, and we're going to move to large cap stocks. It's kind of a fancy word for large company stocks. Think Walmart, Coca-Cola, Raytheon, British Petroleum, Google, Apple. Stocks like that are considered large company stocks. Had we put $1 in large company stocks in 1950, that would have grown to $969 in 2013. It's a far cry from putting your money in a savings account. If we had put $1 in small company stocks, I kind of think of Biomed around here, which is no longer publicly traded, but it's considered sort of a small company stock. I work for Old National Bank. That's really considered kind of a small company stock today. Kroger, for example, is sort of considered between a small and a mid-sized company. But had you put $1 in small company stocks, a little bit more volatility, in other words, a little bit more up and down, because smaller companies don't have the resources bigger companies do. So when we go into times of economic hardships, small company stocks tend to do worse. But that grew to $4,260. So kind of one of the things I always talk about is time. How much time do you have for retirement? And the more time you have for retirement, really the more money you should have in stocks. We also call them equities. So the more money you should have in large company stocks and small company stocks. So let's move on to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about the plan highlights and benefits, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the forms you'll have to fill out. And when we talk about the forms, I'll specifically hit some investment options at that point in time. So you are eligible immediately. Your first day of hire here with Easter Seals ARC, you have the ability to join the 403B plan. What will happen after you've been here 1 year and you have 1,000 hours of employment, which is basically part-time, roughly 20 hours a week, you will be eligible to receive a 50 cents on the dollar match on the first 6% of your pay that you defer into the plan. So, as the slide kind of indicates, if you put in 6% of your pay, you're going to get a 3% match from Easter Seals ARC. If you were to put in 3% of your pay, they're going to put in 1.5% of your pay in as a matching contribution. If you were to put in 10% of your pay, like I kind of indicated maybe the average 25-year-old needs to shoot for, then you're still just going to get 3% match from Easter Seals ARC. Now, today's not the last opportunity you have to sign up for the plan. You will have further opportunities. Anytime you want to talk to HR area or your payroll department, I should say, you can sign up for the 403B plan. But remember, as I kind of talked about in one of those first slides, the sooner you start, the bigger your balance has the opportunity to be. While we're on this slide, let's talk a little bit about the workbook that hopefully you have in front of you. You should have something from Mass Mutual, and it's really our enrollment kit. And I want to point out a couple of things and go through the forms before we hit the last slide. So if you kind of take that enrollment kit, hopefully that's next to you, the first thing I want to talk about is how do I get some investment and guidance. Hey, I want to participate. Hey, I want to start saving for my retirement. So how do I do that? You know, you talked about stocks outperforming bonds, outperforming cash, Kevin, but I just don't know what mixes for me. Well, one option for you to do is on page 8 of that enrollment kit, there's a sort of a survey or a questionnaire that walks you through 7 different questions. And then you add up the points of those 7 different questions. And then you flip over to page 9. And on page 9, you're going to see a bunch of different pie graphs. And depending on how many points you totaled through your questionnaire, you'll find yourself in one of those pie graphs. So let's assume for a sec I had 28 points. I would find myself in that growth pie graph. And I would say, hey, 60% of my portfolio should fall in U.S. stocks. Those can be large cap or small cap. 20% should fall inside of the international stock options that we have in the plan. And the other 20% should fall into the bond options or the fixed account that we have available to us in the plan. And we'll see some of those investments here in a second. So this is just an option. You don't have to do it, but it can help guide you a little bit as to where you think you ought to invest your money. All right, so let's page back, and unfortunately we lose some page numbers in this book, but I'm going to tell you it's around page 53, 54, 52, so go back toward the back of your book, and we're looking for a page that says enrollment form in the top left. This is how you get started in your 403B plan. So for example, under Section A, you don't have to do anything. Section B, you're going to list your Social Security number, your employee name, gender, legal address, phone number, all that great stuff. New hire, you're going to mark type of enrollment where it says new hire. Date of hire, you should know that because more than likely that's this week. If this is your second or third time around with Easter Seals ARC, you probably need to see the business office or your payroll area just to make sure you've got the correct hire date, okay? Then in Section C, you're going to indicate what type and how much you want to defer out of your paycheck. And there's 2 options here, and this gets a little bit sticky. So grab a drink of water and maybe a cup of coffee, and we'll try to go through it here in the next couple of seconds. Pre-tax is what most people are familiar with in their normal 401k or 403b plan. We take money out on a pre-tax basis. You invest it in the mutual funds. At the end of when you're ready for retirement, what you're going to do is you're going to take out only the amount you need every year, whether that's at 4% of that account balance. And let's say that's $8,000. When you take that $8,000 out, it's going to be includable in your taxes as income, but you'll be retired. So it may not be a very large income tax bracket, correct? The Roth after-tax elective deferral contributions are exactly what they say. They come out after taxes. So it's almost like writing a check to your savings account after you've gotten your payroll check deposited. But in this case, Easter Seals ARC's still going to take care of it for you. They're going to put it into the plan. They're going to match it. The big benefit of a Roth contribution is the fact that it grows tax-free. So going back to Chris on that slide, and he had put $200,000 in his Roth 401k plan, and it grew to $1.1 million. All that $900,000 in earnings for Chris grew tax-free. So imagine that. Uncle Sam probably isn't going to like you, but you do get to pay a little less in taxes over the long haul. Some people call the Roth, hey, I pay taxes on the seed, but not on the harvest. So in other words, I'm paying tax per payroll on a small amount, but when it grows to a big amount, I don't owe large taxes. So how do you know which to choose? And that's really tough because it's on a person-by-person basis. I'll give you some general ideas. 1, seek your accountant if you use one. Ask him or her which one might be best for you. 2, I find a lot of people that might be in this type of service work will tend to be lower income individuals, and they'll also tend to be taxed lower, maybe in the 10% tax bracket. If you're in a 15 or 10% tax bracket, I would probably highly encourage you to utilize the Roth side. If you and maybe your spouse find yourself in the 28, 30, 35% tax bracket, in general, I would find that person might be better off using the pre-tax option. If you choose not to participate at this time, you would mark that final box that kind of says, hey, I do not elect to contribute. But keep in mind, you'll still have the opportunity to contribute at any point in time you decide to. If you look at Section D, which is on the next page, you'll see that this is where we make those investment elections. So one way to pick up on those investment elections, again, is to do that survey we just went through on page 8 and 9. Another option is those asset allocation funds that are listed on the left column. You'll notice there's the T. Rowe Price Retirement 2010, 20, 30, 2040, and 2050 fund. Pick the fund that's most close to your projected retirement age of 65 or 67. And here's what the manager will do with these funds. You won't have to touch it. It's professionally managed. You'll have large company, small company, international stocks, and bonds and cash all built into these portfolios. What the manager does do, though, is the closer we get to your retirement age, say it's 2040 fund, the more money he'll take out of stocks and put into bonds. Because remember, over longer periods of time, stocks outperform bonds, outperform cash. But the closer we get to retirement, the less volatility we want inside of our portfolio. So that's another option on how to do the investments. Again, pick an asset allocation fund, maybe that's closest to your retirement. Another option will be to contact me. And at the next slide, we'll show our business office contact here at Easter Seals Ark, as well as my contact. So you can contact me if you have some questions about the investments or any particular portion of this plan. So the final form I want to go to, which is a couple of more pages back in your enrollment kit, is the beneficiary designation form. And we're almost done, so feel free to get comfortable here for the next minute or two. But a beneficiary form is pretty simple to fill out. In other words, if you should pass away while being employed by Easter Seals Ark or while having money in this Easter Seals Ark plan, we're going to need to know who to make that contribution or who to make that balance payable to upon your death. So if you're married, Indiana law and Ohio law, if you happen to live over there, they require that your spouse be 100% primary beneficiary. All right, so you're going to put your spouse's name down in Section C, her Social Security number, her date of birth or his date of birth, and you're going to mark spouse, and then you're going to put 100% as whole percentages. Then if you have contingent beneficiaries, and I always give the example in my case, like I said, I have 6 kids. My wife and I are out on date night. She's my primary beneficiary. We get hit in an auto accident. We both die. Then we need to know when we come to this form, they're going to look at my balance and they're going to say, all right, it goes to his wife. Wait a minute, she was involved in the auto accident. Now we're going to look at the contingent beneficiaries, and that's who we're going to pay the money out to. So we're going to pay the money out to my 6 kids, and you'll notice there's only 4 slots out there. So if you have as many kids or more than I do, then you just need to kind of make photocopies of this page and put your children down, list them as you want. And then again, you're going to put their Social Security number, date of birth, their relationship to you, I would mark child, and the percentages I want each child to receive. So a lot of it's going to depend on how much I like my kids and which kid I like the best, right? Just kidding. In my case, they're pretty much equal. If you're not married, this form, well, let's back up. If you are married, but your spouse is not going to be your primary beneficiary, and maybe that's for some estate planning purposes, he or she is going to have to sign on the next page or the back of this page under the spousal consent section F. And they're going to need to do that in front of a notary who's going to notarize this in section G. If your spouse is 100% beneficiary, there's no need to complete section F or section G. If you are not married at this time, you're going to mark the box unmarried in section B. You can name anybody you want as primary beneficiary, and you can name anybody you want as contingent beneficiary. So maybe it's parents, brothers and sisters, relatives, uncles and aunts, things like that. You can decide whoever you want. Please keep in mind that you can always make a change to this. So if there is, you add a child, you drop a spouse, whatever it might be, you can go to the business office, get a new beneficiary form, and this can be updated. You get married, it needs to be updated. So always kind of think about that or have that in the back of your head. Finally, I'm going to talk about the rollover contribution form. If you have another 401k or 403b plan out there and you want to put everything in the same bucket and you want to roll it on to Easter Seals ARC, you do have the ability to do that. I'm not going to walk through this form at this time. What I will say is feel free to contact me at my contact number, which is the next slide, and I'll assist you through this process. So that brings us really to the last slide here, and what we're doing here is giving you Gloria St. Clair's phone number here and how to get a hold of her in the business office. She is the person that you would submit these forms to, and if you wanted to do any deferral election changes some years down the road to increase your deferrals, or if you wanted to change your beneficiary form, you're going to go to Gloria St. Clair in the business office. If you have any questions about the plan, whether it's, hey, can I take money out? B, can I borrow money from the plan? C, I don't know anything about investments. I need you to help me. In that case, you can contact me with Old National Investments. You'll see my phone number there as well as my email address. So hopefully that concludes most of the information that we can give you at this time. Again, if there are other questions, you can either see either me or Gloria. And now for the exciting part of taking your test. Good luck.